Joining me in the room today is superstar producer and director Roger M. Bobb. Roger, welcome back.
Thank you. I love the way you say superstar.
Hey, only for the superstars. You are Black in the Green Room with me, your host, Keith Underwood. And this is your spot for real talk about entertainment with entertainers, creatives, and showbiz professionals. Today in the Green Room, we are joined by one of the most successful Black producer directors working in Hollywood today, from helping build Tyler Perry Studios into a powerhouse to now leading his own company, Bobbcat Films. Roger M. Bobb has helped shape modern Black television and film in ways audiences may not even realize. Now he's helping bring the story of legendary comedian Redd Foxx to the screen in the upcoming biopic, Seeing Red. Welcome to the room, seven-time NAACP Image Award winner, Roger M. Bobb. Roger, what's up? And welcome to the room.
Thank you very much, Keith. That was quite an introduction. I appreciate you having me.
Oh, absolutely, man. How you been?
I've been great. I've been great. Just cranking these movies out. That's what I do.
Right. Man, you love it still?
Absolutely, absolutely. It doesn't even feel like work, and it's a lot of work. It's hard work, but I'm passionate about it, and I just feel like I'm the luckiest guy in the world because I get to create programming for my people about my people, in a way that I want to tell it, and I get paid for it. So what's better than that?
Hey, you can't do worse in any means, not at all.
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
so Roger, you were born in London, and then you were
Correct.
raised in Brooklyn, and you
Yep.
were inspired by filmmakers like Spike Lee. So, what first made you believe that someone like Roger Bobb could actually have a real career in Hollywood?
Well, it's funny you asked that, and that's where representation really matters. I know it's kind of
Mm.
a catch flip phrase, but it really does because I'll tell you a story. So I came from London. I moved to London to the mean streets of Brooklyn when I was 5 years old. So I was kind of like this fat, pudgy kid with a British accent. So if you can imagine,
Wow.
that didn't really go over well in the mean streets of Brooklyn. So I got picked on a lot, right?
Right.
My Caribbean mother said, you know what? You just need to stay your butt in the house. And I would just stay at home. I would not go outside for a long period of time. She wouldn't let me. And so I just would watch television. And that's where I got my love for film and television, right? So I
Hmm.
was just this kid and I just always loved film and television, but I never thought I could do it as a career. And so, I was thinking about going into law and all these other professions, but I still had this passion and desire for film and television. But quite frankly, I just thought it was something that white people did in this place called Hollywood, far away from Brooklyn, right? And
Right.
all of a sudden, I was like about 20, 21, and then this young man from a neighborhood not too far from me named Spike Lee did this movie called She's Gotta Have It, which went on to do phenomenally well and created a huge ecosystem for him to continue to make films. And but for me, it was like, wow, if this black guy from Brooklyn can make a movie, I can do it too. And then that was around the same time that Robert did the Hollywood Shuffle. Uh,
Right.
and so, it was kind of like that black renaissance of independent film around that time. So, the bottom line is, it's people like Spike and it's people like Robert Townsend who just paved the way for a little kid like me to say, hey, if they can do it, I can do it too.
Yeah, when you came into the industry, did you come in realizing that you were going to follow in some huge footsteps?
No, I didn't think about it like that. I just thought, that I had my own voice and I had my own vision. And to be honest with you, I just wanted to be involved in it some sort of way. I didn't necessarily know if I wanted to be a director or producer. I just wanted to have a career in film. Right. And so I actually started off doing music videos first, and that actually translated into then working on film. So it wasn't like I want to follow in Spike or Robert Townsend or Mario Van Peebles' footsteps. It was just more like I just want to be able to tell my own stories and just be involved in that creative process.
So, before Tyler Perry Studios, you came up into the industry, as you mentioned earlier, in a very traditional way. You were
Correct.
learning the business from the ground up. And so, what were some of the biggest lessons from those early years that still guide you right now?
Yeah, so I started off doing really low budget music videos, and then I got into this amazing program called the DGA Assistant Directors Program. The DGA is the guild that governs motion picture directors and assistant directors, right? And they have this highly competitive program, and I was able to get in. And so, and it was through that program that I just started to work with industry professionals. In fact, my very first movie was a movie called Copland with Sylvester Stallone and Robert De Niro and Malik Yoba and Ray Liotta, like all these like heavyweights. And I just could not believe I was standing in a room with all these guys, right? And so, but I felt like I belonged there, and so
Mm.
and it's from many instances like that, which allowed me just to have the confidence that yeah, yes, there's these A-list actors and directors and what have you, but I belong in this room. I belong in this environment. I should be doing this, right? And so, I kind of took that confidence with me as I then started to work my way up, went to film school, worked as a production assistant. I literally just worked my way up to assistant director and then producer. And when I first worked with Tyler on his very first film, I was his first assistant director, right? And then I became his producer, and then I became the executive vice president of his company. So I'm just a true testament of, you asked me what I learned, just believing in yourself. And Tyler is a big part of that as well. Like a lot of people don't realize, he financed his first film from the money he made from selling the DVDs of his plays. I
That's
mean,
right.
constantly invest in himself because he believes in himself. And so even if you don't have the money, you need to invest the time. You need to invest whatever you can, whatever resources that you do have, whether it's a lot or a little, just reinvest it back in yourself. And if you truly believe that you have a passion for this industry or really any industry, then I'm living testament that you'll succeed. A lot of people always ask me, well, how do you know if you have the passion? How do you know if you have the
Mm.
passion? It's really easy because it's going to be really hard times and you're going to want to quit. But there's something inside you just won't let you quit. And that's when you know you have the real passion for this.
Mhm. Yeah. What's the balance between confidence and training? The balance between the two.
Well, I think both go because I mean you can be inertly you could be a confident person. Like my parents raised me to be a confident person, right? But you don't know if you can do it unless you do it, right?
That's
Like
right.
where I'm the best basketball player in the world, but unless I'm going over there and I'm hitting threes and I'm dunking
Right.
my free throws, then you don't know. So you just have to do it. And then with film, the funny thing about film is that you can take 10 directors, you can take 10 producers, you can take 10 actors, all successful, and not one of them came up exactly the same way. And that's the
Hmm.
beauty. There's a different path for everyone. So it's just a matter of continuing to always learn and continuing to pave your own path.
Hmm. What do you still learn today? I mean, from your cast, from people around you, what are some of the things that still feed you?
Well, the funny thing is actors are like children, and I say that with respect in terms of
Hmm.
you each one has to be treated differently. Like each actor gets motivated differently. Each actor has a different process, and so I'm always constantly learning each actor's process and what motivates them for me to
Mm.
best performance out of them. So that's one thing as a director that I'm constantly learning. And then the technology, we all know about AI. We know
Hmm.
tools are constantly evolving, and unless you get in front of it, then you're going to be left behind in terms of your creativity, because other people will be using these tools in a way that's effective and efficient. And yes, they're tools, and you still have to have the vision. That's still very important, but it's also important that you keep up with the new technology as well, because that can actually enhance your vision.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's funny that you mentioned AI because I always feel that it's about using it responsibly,
Yeah.
as a tool,
Mhm.
as kind of that template to build upon. What are your direct thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, well, I guess that there's two avenues. There's the visual aspect of AI, in which it's the technology that AI has created has made it a lot less expensive to achieve what used to be very expensive. So
Mhm.
what that does as a filmmaker, as a content creator, it expands your universe of what you're able to do. And
Mhm.
that is a great thing. There's no downside of that. Now, some might say the downside is that the technology takes away jobs from the people who previously used to do that. But my pushback for that is, well, then those people then need to retrain themselves so that they
Mhm.
can effectively use this AI process to help, increase their value to the community, right? So as
Yes.
a filmmaker, the visual effects that AI can achieve is astounding. And I
Mhm.
continue to use it. I see other people continue to use it. And things that used to cost literally hundreds of thousands of dollars cost hundreds of dollars now. And
That's
that,
right.
and as a filmmaker, so now I'm not beholden by a budget now. So now I can expand what I want to create and expand the thoughts and expand the scripts that I want to produce. So from that aspect, it's a great thing. And then there is also the creative writing aspect to it, right?
Mhm.
So that's
Right.
where it gets a little tricky. That's where it gets a little tricky because, I know for a fact that, I've seen scripts come across my desk that I know were written by
Mhm.
ChatGPT or
Yes.
scriptware or other AI driven devices. And I will say this to your point, it's a tool that you need to use, right? But it's still just a tool.
That's
Ultimately,
right.
it has to be your voice. Ultimately, it has to be your vision. And you can't, and what it has a tendency to do is make people lazy. I'm talking about
Mhm.
the writing side, right? Because you still want to have your voice on that page, right? You still want it to be your vision. So you can use it as a tool. You can use it to maybe enhance some dialogue or to change scenes around and things like that. But, fundamentally, if you have a hammer and a nail and some wood, you still have to have the vision of where it goes, and you still have to rear your hand back and pound that nail into the piece of wood, et cetera, et cetera. So, these are tools that you use to build a house, and you can't just let the house get built and you don't know what's in it because that house is going to fall real quick. So that's my
That's right.
AI.
That's right. That's right, Roger Bob. And I agree with you 100%. So, as we were talking about earlier, you helped to build Tyler Perry Studios during a time when Black-owned television production was expanding in a huge way. So, looking back now, did you realize at the time that you all were changing the industry? Did you feel like, hey, this is really different?
I did. I actually did, to be honest with you, because it's actually it's a blessing, and it's also a shame that Tyler is the first because
Hmm.
many people have worked in Hollywood, and be honest with me, so many Black professionals have been successful. Why does it take this outsider to be the one to say, "Hey, I'm going to build a studio. I'm going to create my own program"? But you know what? He did it. And to answer your question, we did know we were doing something special, but the thing is, it was so intense. We had blinders on, so we didn't have a chance to like step back and look at a macro view of what we were doing. But we absolutely knew something was very special was happening. I remember when we did our very first sitcom, House of Pain.
Hmm.
And for those of you who don't know, he financed that himself. He did basically a 1090 deal where he paid for the first 10. They aired it, it did well, and they got an order for 90, right?
Hmm.
So I remember, and this is how his mind works. He said, I want you to go and look at some sitcoms in LA and see how they work and blah, blah. So I went to a couple of sitcoms and I came back. It's like, okay, well, they do one episode a week. He's like, one episode a week? I'm like, explaining to him with the process, like, oh, no, we're not doing that. And he totally reinvented the way, sitcoms are shot to the fact
Right.
the way it is now, where you don't have to necessarily do one a week. If you have a strong, effective, efficient production running the show, you can actually do it in a more cost-effective manner, and that's what we did. And so that's just a
Mhm.
small example of him just being a trailblazer for film and television production.
Yeah. Speaking of trailblazers, as a a Black executive and producer, what did it mean to not only create content, but then to help create infrastructure, jobs, and long-term opportunities behind the scenes for other Black creators?
It means the world to me. I mean, it's so important that each one teach one, and that
Hmm.
we basically, earn, learn, and return. That's my advice to all successful, content creators, because it was done for me, and we have to do it for each other, because you know what? No one else is going to do it if we don't do it. I
That's
mean,
right.
know about the Jews in Hollywood and how they look out for each other, and quite frankly, the gays in Hollywood and how they look out
Hmm.
for each other. Well, we have to look out for each other. And I hope that, people like Tyler and even Denzel, we know he's not boastful about it, but we all know, how much he contributes to other people, and Chadwick and this
Hmm.
person, that person, how he's helped them. And so we just need to continue to have that mindset if we're going to be successful in this industry.
Right, right. Why do you think it's so easy for some people who have achieved to forget that, or sometimes say it, but not do it?
I think part of the reason is that it's still a very difficult industry, right? And so
Hmm.
even like, I was looking at the article. There's a fantastic article about Taraji Henson in I believe it's the New York Times Magazine. I can't remember, but she basically talks about the fact that when she won the Academy Award, the first thing that movie she did was our movie, I Could Do Bad All by Myself. And
Hmm.
she talked about the fact that she got a lot of flack, from even her own people about, why are you doing this? And she said, because nobody else called. you know, nobody else
Mm-hmm.
called, and we paid her what she was her value. And so I to answer your question, I think because it's a constant hustle. Even if you're successful, it's still a constant hustle. And so I think we're just focused on what our next job is going to be, what our next production is going to be, versus, okay, I got to focus on that, and I got to reach back and make sure that I help people ahead of me. So I think sometimes, because we're so focused on that, because it's a constant hustle, sometimes we forget that we have a responsibility within that hustle to continue to bring people along with us.
Yeah. And then how does Roger Bobb decide who to bring into the fold?
Mhm. Well, fortunately, I've been able to meet a lot of people based in Atlanta, and we have a bunch of HBCUs here, and I have internships programs. So I always meet, tremendously talented young people who are hungry, who want to learn the industry, and so fortunately, I have a plethora of people to choose from, and even people that I've worked with. I'm so proud of, like, my assistants are now working at Netflix and running the
Hmm.
visions and all that great stuff. So, for me, it's just, you just have to have that hunger. And the hunger is actually more important than the talent, right? Because we can
Mm,
own the talent, right? But
absolutely.
somebody's lazy, if somebody really doesn't want it, then we don't want that energy around. We want people who really have a passion for storytelling, and who are aware of the responsibility that we have as African American content providers to be honest in our storytelling. So we want those type of people, working with Raj Bob and Bobbcat and everybody else that I do business with. So, but fortunately, there's a lot of those folks around, especially in Atlanta. So I'm fortunate that I have a great internship program, and just a great group of other industry professionals. That we always share. Like, if we have a cinematographer or costume designer,
Mm,
that's great. First thing we do when we wrap, man, if you have anything, you got to hire this woman, you got to hire this guy, he's great. So a lot of producers and directors, we actually have that dialogue. Conversely, if you're not very good, we also have that dialogue as well. So the
right.
interesting thing about this profession is that you're literally only as good as your last job, because if you sucked at your last job, we're going to hear
Hmm.
about it. So it encourages everybody to have maximum effort as you continue to progress in this industry.
That's right. So at a certain point, you made the decision to step out and build Bobcat Films. So was there ever fear in leaving a successful machine behind to, take a bet on yourself?
There actually was not, because, fortunately, as I mentioned, one thing that my former boss taught me is to, bet on yourself and have confidence in yourself, and to invest in yourself. And that's exactly what I did. And he was very gracious about allowing me to go out and spread my wings.
Mm,
We still have a great relationship today. But the interesting thing is when I drove out of Tyler Perry Studios, I literally drove right into my office to my own studio, and I already had a project ready to go. So there wasn't really any trepidation about, oh, now what do I do now? Because I was kind of setting it up as I was still working there. Because the truth is, it was an amazing experience working there. But ultimately, the same way Tyler wants to tell his stories, I wanted to tell my stories as well. And I also wanted to get into directing as well. And so I knew the only way to do that is to, tell my own stories and do it my own way. And the only way you really get respect is if you go out and do it yourself. And so, fortunately, that's what I was been able to do. And we've had a tremendous amount of success since then doing it.
Yeah. Will there ever be, or will there be again, a TPS Bobcat Films collaboration?
You never know. You never. You know what? I hope there will be. I hope that I love the guy. He's amazing. And I'll say this. Tyler Perry has made more Black millionaires in this industry
Mhm.
than any single individual in history of Hollywood, and that's a fact.
Mhm.
So sure, I'd love to work with him
I know that's right. So you've produced hundreds of episodes of television and worked across comedy, drama, and film. So what keeps you creatively excited after all of these years in the industry?
Man, just telling new stories, working with different talents, working
Mhm.
with talented people. I was watching Divorced Sisters the other day, right? There's an actor,
Mhm.
Rico Lee, and he is just killing this role.
Yes.
I have nothing to do with that show, but I reached out to him. And I just said, "Hey, man, I just want you to know I am really enjoying your performance." And they hit me back, and I said, "We got to work together." So, I get excited when I see talented people just displaying their talents, and I want to work with that person, and it's not just actors and directors, but also writers and other and actresses and cinematographers. When I look at a movie like Sinners, that just kind of invigorates me. It's like, yeah,
Hmm.
let's do it. So, to answer your question, just working with other like-minded, passionate content creators to go out there and again, tell our stories. I have no interest in telling anyone's stories other than the African American experience.
And say that proudly, Roger Bob. I love that, man. I absolutely love that. Right here, Black in the Green Room. So, we've talked, a lot about the future and investing, into the future and future talent. So let's talk a little bit about Redd Foxx.
Yes.
A lot of people they know Redd Foxx as a comedy legend, but not necessarily as someone who, like yourself, fought for power and representation behind the scenes. So, what surprised you the most as you began working on Seeing Red?
Yeah, so Seeing Red, as you pointed out at the beginning, is the new film that I'm working on with T.I and the amazing, legendary Bill Duke.
Yes.
So we want to tell the story of Redd Foxx, and Redd Foxx. A lot of people obviously know him from Sanford and Son, but if you don't really know his history, he came up during segregation in the segregated South. And then, he was able to be successful and be one of the first Black men to have his own sitcom. But it was a constant struggle. And even in the middle of the height of the sitcom success, it was still a constant struggle for him to get paid what he's worth, to get Black
Hmm.
writers on the show, to get Black directors on the show, to get the actors that he wanted to work with in the show. And he's the star of a hit show. So that goes to show you that even at that time, you can still be successful and not have power. And so the time of his life that we're showcasing in this film is that moment that I talked about where he's at the height of his power and it's a constant fight and it's a constant struggle for him to exercise the power and the creativity of his own show with the
Hmm.
folks in Hollywood who want to still basically try to keep him down and try to rein in the power. But fortunately, he wasn't having it, and we're glad that he wasn't having it, and that's why we're telling his amazing story.
That's right. Roger, with everything that's happening in the world today, with the the suppressing of DEI
Yes, yes.
and the trying to get rid
Erasing
of our
our history.
history with
Yeah.
our with books and the whole bit.
Mhm.
What are some ways that we can ensure, like with Red, that we don't go backwards where they're trying to take away our voice and our vision and our stories?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Number one is to keep ourselves informed, to listen to shows like you, to listen to the Black media, to read Black publications so we know really what's happening with regards to DEI, sorry, with regards to this current administration literally trying to erase our history from anyone who is interested in seeing it. So we have to be aware of what's going on, and we have to talk to people who can do something about it. When I say that, I'm
Mm,
our elected officials. It's really easy. You just send an email. Hey, look, this is not acceptable to me. What are you going to do about it? That's all it takes. Trust me, when they get enough of those emails, they're going to do something about it. So there's that. And to the extent that you can communicate to our younger people so it doesn't skip a generation or we don't lose a generation, um, talking to the younger generation and making sure that they're aware of our history and quite frankly what's trying to be done to it so that we can continue the struggle and this fight to make sure we keep our history relevant in this country.
absolutely. You've said that this film is about capturing the energy of a genius and an architect of change. So, in your opinion, what impact did Red Fox have on Black entertainment that still echoes today?
Well, Redd Foxx made Richard Pryor. Red Fox walked so Richard Pryor could run.
Mm,
Richard Pryor walked so Eddie Murphy could run. Murphy walked so that Kevin Hart could run. So you see the correlation when one, specifically to African American comedian, when they do well, it opens the door for other African American comedians to do well. Why? Because the establishment realizes that, hey, we can make money, and ultimately that's what it's about, right? So
hmm
the success that Redd Foxx had on his show opened doors for other sitcoms like The Jeffersons and the other Black sitcoms that came after it. Also, though, the fact that he was able to break down barriers and insist on Black writers and insist on Black directors, and quite frankly, insist on quality scripts, that teaches the establishment that one, you can still make money with African American talent, but you still have to respect the craft. And you can do both and still be successful. And that's his.
hmm Yeah, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, the dollar is green.
Correct. Yeah.
If the dollar is green, so
That's
why
all
not?
Hollywood talk cares about. You know,
That's right. And so why not invest that green into some black?
exactly, exactly.
On a lighter note,
Yes.
after all of these years in Hollywood, man, what's one funny or surreal moment where you stopped and thought, I can't believe this is actually my life?
Wow, man, that's a good question. There's a few of them. I generally don't get starstruck, but when we had the grand opening of the first Tyler Perry Studios, I had the honor and the privilege to meet Sidney Poitier.
Oh
And,
gosh, yeah.
and to this day, he's the only actor who I've ever asked to take a picture with. And it was amazing. But my mother, who you can imagine is a huge Sidney Poitier fan, she was my date then. And they talk about people falling out. She
Yes.
literally fell out in this man's hands because she was so flustered. It was embarrassing for me, but we both caught her. And but I didn't even know that was really a thing. You see it, people falling out, but my mama fell out for Sidney Poitier. So that was a real pinch me moment. And that was and the fact that she was just, it was a dream of her to meet him. And so it just really solidified one, that, I did the right thing in my career choice. Two, I did the right thing bringing my mama there. And
Yes.
three, I need to give her some more sugar next time. Put it out in public. Let's not falling out on people.
That's right.
So that was definitely one pinch me moment.
Yeah, 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 man. What was the conversation like on the way home?
Oh, just it wasn't even a conversation with me. She was just busy calling all her friends, talking about what happened. She just ignored the hell out of me. So, look, and that's kind of, my parents, you know, are why I do what I do. They raised a strong Black man, and they raised me to basically be passionate about whatever it is that I want to do. And I want them to be proud. And so that's why I'm very actually choosy about the projects that I take. I'm not going to take any project that I feel is not worthy of the Bobb name. And I'm very
Mm,
that it's because of my parents, and so I'm very proud of that. And so I will never do a project that I feel doesn't, one, effectively represent Black people. And look, everything is not great. We understand that. You have to have nuances and storytelling, but still, I'm not out here trying to embarrass the community with the program that I greenlight. And so, fortunately, even working with people like Tyler, I'm able to create programming that all African Americans can be proud of, and that's very important to me.
yeah. One of the names that you mentioned when you were talking about the legacy of Redd Foxx was Eddie Murphy.
Yes. Mhm.
And Eddie Murphy, one of the things that was important to him was not just fostering and nurturing the next generation, but also reaching back and bringing back to the forefront people from the past, those legacy people, those people that some might have said were washed up.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that about not just nurturing the present, but also the past?
No, that's fantastic. That's a very good question. When like one of my favorite Eddie Murphy films is actually Harlem Nights.
Absolutely.
Look at all the actors that are in there: Redd Foxx and Della Reese
Yeah.
and Charlie Murphy and Arsenio and just and I remember seeing an interview when he talked about that film, and he said, he one of the reasons he did that film was to create that opportunity for them.
Hmm.
You see how much they appreciated it. And there's very few films, especially now, where we have legacy people in it, where you can see three, four, five, stars from the past come out and do their thing. And I think it's very important because if you don't know where you come from, you don't know where you're going to be going. So
Mm.
it's important for me, and I think it should be important for other content creators to not only cater to the younger generation, but to also show the younger generation, the generation before us, who enabled us to do what we do and enabled us to be the best uh, that we can be.
Absolutely. So when I'm going to be real cliche, but I'm being cliche with you. So when young Black filmmakers, producers, and executives when they look at your journey from Brooklyn to one of the most influential Black producers in the industry, what do you hope that they truly take away from your story beyond your success?
Wow, that's a good question, man. Well, I hope that they see that it was a crooked path, but ultimately it was a path that led in one direction.
You had to
And
bob and weave.
Bob and we, yeah, yeah. Um, and that it was only achieved through hard work and passion. Also, though, you have to have a plan, right? Because if you don't have a plan, then you're just spinning your wheels. You have to be very analytical about your career and what you want. The other thing is, look at other people's careers and see how they achieved it, and you can emulate that. So there's so many ways to achieve the success that you want to achieve. But I'm a living testament of passion, hard work, and being strategic. And when I say strategic, what I mean is when you take an opportunity, look past the opportunity. Don't just do it for that, but look past where you can learn, where you can go. Does it benefit you in some way? Is it worth the sacrifice that you would need to make for that opportunity? So these are the decisions that you need to make as you go through your career path. And the other thing is you have to trust your instincts. No one knows you like you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to trust your gut with regards to the decisions that you make in this industry, because quite frankly, Keith, it's a hard industry and it's kind of cutthroat, to be quite honest with you. And everybody sees the red carpet and all that stuff, but the glitz and the glamour. But there's a lot of hard work and there's a lot of failure, to be quite honest with you, that's involved. But as my good friend David Mann says, a setback is just a setup for a comeback, right? So you'll have these setbacks. Every single successful person has had failure in their life. So failure should not be the be all to end all. It's what you learn from your failures and what you get from them that determines your successful path. And so I hope that when they look at me and my body of work and how I'm able to achieve what I can achieve, that they see that, I followed those principles.
Yeah. Outside of seeing Redd, what else are you currently working out on, and what's coming up?
Yeah, I'm actually I did a Christmas movie with Brandy last Christmas based on her song Christmas Every Day, and we're getting ready to do a sequel to that. And so I'm very excited about working on that. I had produced the first season of Reasonable Doubt on Hulu, and they're on their fourth season right now. And they're shooting in Atlanta, and I'm so proud of them and the crew over there. And and just continue, and obviously seeing Redd, we're heavy in pre-production on that. So man, just constantly having like I said, it's a hustle. So those are the projects that I have out right now. And I'll come back on your show when I have a few more projects to announce.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Roger Bobb, where can everybody keep up with all of this great wisdom and experience that you have on socials?
Yeah, at Bobbcat Films is the Instagram account, and you can always go to bobbcatfilms.com to see the films that we have coming up next.
Absolutely. Roger Bobb, thank you so much for your time, and it's been good seeing you. Absolutely. And I appreciate you, man.
Thanks, Keith. It's been a pleasure.
Be sure to follow me, Keith Underwood, at Mr. Keith L. Underwood on IG. You can also follow me on FB at Keith L. Underwood. And you gotta follow Black in the Green Room at Black in the Green Room across all platforms. Until next time, this has been Black in the Green Room.